Hello everyone and welcome to DIY Ideas. Today I want to show you this wonderful, really cool baby or toddler square, and you can see how interesting it looks. It's definitely something that your baby or toddler is going to look forward to, and it's super easy to make. Stay tuned. Okay, so here is everything that we're gonna need for today. So as always, we have some basics in the right corner: fabric scissors, regular paper scissors, pins of course. Then I have a hand gauge here, as well as a pen, and that's gonna be for the pattern, as well as a fabric pen for marking the fabric without any marks after you wash it. So we're gonna do a pattern first, then we're gonna do the rest. Here I have some thread here in just plain white. You can of course choose any other color that you like. Fabric is completely up to you this time. The only thing you need to take care of is that it's child safe, so just make sure that you choose fabrics that won't be a danger for the child that you're making it for. But the fabric itself is completely up to you. So you can see here all of the different types that I have. So there is something from an old towel, then you see here something with stripes, a little bit softer, some fleece, and this section right here. I'm not sure what it's called, but it looks really interesting and I was excited to put it in this video and maybe try working with it. So you can do different textures, and that's going to be great for your baby and a lot of fun. If your fabric is too thin, then you can use something like this. This is what I use kind of as an inner layer to make it a little bit thicker and sturdier. And you can of course use any other leftover fabric for the same purpose. Then we can talk about accessories or different details that you can put on here that are completely optional. So I have these wooden rings here, and what I wanted to do with them is just kind of put a band around them. So you see here something like this, or even something like this, a bit thicker. So you see here the details or the accessories, that's exactly what I meant. You can see the wooden ring that we talked about, then I made kind of this pillowy section here, and you can see all of the different types of fabric that I've showed you in the beginning utilized in this project. So it's great for leftovers. So you can use something that you would stuff your pillows or cushions with, or also something store-bought like this. So this keeps its shape, which makes it really nice to use. And what you can do is just kind of cut out the shape and size here that you need. So let's start with a pattern for our square. So you can see here I have a square-shaped piece of paper, and I'll show you I have here 12 centimeters on both sides. So you can of course make it bigger or smaller depending on how much fabric you have and what you want to get in the end, of course. So we're going to use this to transfer it onto our fabric. So here is our paper pattern, and we're going to transfer it onto our fabric. You can see here that I'm starting. The order, of course, doesn't matter, but what I would recommend you to do, just so it's easier for you later, is starting from the top right corner, but from the back. So this is the back side of the fabric. That way the fabric marker or the fabric mark is going to be on the back instead of the front. So anyway, you can of course start from the corner or just pick a section where you like the pattern, in case you have a patterned type of fabric. Now that we've transferred the exact shape, we can use our pins to keep everything in place in case you're doing multiple layers of fabric. And then what we want to do is just cut this out so that it looks exactly the way we want it to. And yeah, since a square has 6 sides, we're going to need 6 pieces of fabric exactly the same shape and size. So now that we cut everything out, I would recommend just checking if everything really has the same size and that edges are neat and straight. That's going to prevent problems in the future when you're doing the square. So this is a good time to do this right now. What you can also check or what you can also plan in advance is how stretchy your fabric is going to be. So the stretchier it is, or if it doesn't correspond to the stretchiness of the rest of them, it might act a bit weird with the rest of the sides. So just make sure it's not too stretchy or you're using the exact same stretchiness on every side. And yeah, you can see here that I can't stretch this at all. So that's just what I mean with that. Just make sure that they work well with one another. And yeah, I'm just kind of layering the pieces one on top of each other just to see how well they are cut out. And I'm gonna fix some edges in case I need to. Okay, so now that we know that all of our pieces are the desired size and shape, we can get started with the first one. So on this side, I wanted to do a little kitty face with some cat ears. So since this is a pretty soft, nice fleece, I decided to use fleece leftovers as well. So you see here I did some cat ears from a project before, and what I basically did is cut out the shape that I wanted. You can see here the one stitch that I did to connect the front and back, or the pink and the black fabric. And what I'm going to do now is connect them to my blue square piece. And yeah, I have here some eyes as well. So this is from the same type of fabric as the back side of the ears, the black one. And what we're going to do is basically do these details, connect them to the blue piece so that we have that done and ready to go. Same goes for the ears here, so that's going to be our first step. Of course, I'm using here some sturdier fabric in the back just so it has a bit more firm shape. And yeah, that way you can always work more easily with thinner types of fabric than we're going to do on the side of the ears. And here I am just a couple stitches later, so you can see here what the edge looks like. It's pretty neat and ready to go. And yeah, that's all that we need for this side. So now we're going to continue with the next one. So the next one is going to be the wooden ring, and this is the band that I chose to use as well as my background square. So you see here, this is a pretty big size, but it can also be smaller. You can order these online very easily and get the exact size that you prefer. And this band is just a leftover from some other project that I did in the past. So here also, whatever you have will work just fine. So we're putting the ring through, and then what we're doing is just deciding how long we want this to be. I recommend that it's not too long, just so it's not a safety hazard for your baby or child. And yeah, then what we want to do is basically connect this to the background. So do one little stitch across there, and that's pretty much all we need to do. So yeah, in this case, I'm using the back side of the fabric, so you're not seeing the pretty side of the green because we want to hide the stitch in the back. So we're gonna pin the band to the spot where we want it to connect, and then we're gonna do a stitch across. So just make sure that it's nice and neat because it might be a little bit thicker depending on the type of band you're using. So if it's a little bit thicker, just make sure to be patient and not go too quickly over it with your needle. Okay, so here is our little stitch. You see it's really as close to the edge as possible, and that's exactly what I wanted. So now we can cut off the leftover bits, so we don't need those anymore. And yeah, we're pretty much done with this side as well. This one is really cool and interesting. So I have here a little band that has a really cool texture, and what I wanted to do is just kind of make a little handle or grip just so to give it a little bit more sensory input and things you can do with the box. So you see here what it looks like. I basically used this type of fabric and I did a lot. I ruffled it a lot, and inside here you can see the elastic band that keeps everything in place. And I had a stitch across from there just to make sure that it really stays in place. So on both ends there's a stitch so that it stays as ruffled as I want it to be. And now what we're going to do is again the same thing, but on the outside. Of course you can do edge to edge or corner to corner. This is completely up to you. Doesn't have to be symmetrical or anything, so just choose whatever you think looks best. And then what we're going to do is pin this in place and then do a regular straight stitch across here. So this should be not too long, just so it's not a safety hazard for kids. So something that's a little bit shorter, and that's why we're not doing such a big square, but rather a small one, so 12 centimeter square should work just fine. So just take care if you're doing a bigger project that it's not too long, so it's not a safety hazard. And as I said, you can of course choose any direction or style of connecting this. So here is the rest. So we have all of these done. You can see here I used the background here and put a little pocket section in the front. And yeah, I think it looks really lovely here. So it's a little bit of a crooked side, and I think it really gives it a nice optic look. And then these two sides, since they are textured themselves, I'm just gonna keep like that on there, just so there's not too much going on in the square. So these two are gonna stay plain as they are. Okay, so when it comes to putting all of this together, this is of course completely up to you, and you have all the freedom to do it whichever way you prefer. Which also tells you that our next step is basically putting everything together. So all of the elements are done, and now we can just stitch them up. So of course you can choose the order any way you prefer. And what we're going to do is one row basically, and then the two squares on the side, and that way later you can put all of this together into the desired square shape. So I'm going to show you what I mean in case that sounds a bit confusing. So just make sure that you align everything the way you prefer, and you can see here I'm doing 3 at a time and then 2 on top, just looking at what it looks like. And then this very last one can also go in the longer row. So when you're done with your design, you should have one longer side with 4 squares and one shorter with 3. And yeah, then we can put this pretty side on pretty side like this, do a regular straight stitch, connect that. Then you can continue with the next square and the next one after that until you have all of them done. So let's do that first. And now that we've done the individual pieces, here is what I have. What we're going to do is just separate these leftover bits of fabric on the other side of the stitch, just to make sure that everything looks nice and neat. What you can also do is cut really as close to the stitch as possible without destroying the stitch, and then we can move on to the 2 leftover pieces and connect those as well. And now to connect the 2 leftover pieces, we're going to be working in a pretty similar manner as so far. So you can see here the pretty side of the 4 squares I've already connected, and what we're doing in this case is basically turning it again pretty side on pretty side, so basically like this, so that we can connect those. And here it might be a little bit tricky because of the thickness here, but you can definitely do a straight stitch right there and connect those 2, and when you unfold them you get the exact shape that you want. And we're going to do the same on the other end, so we get our desired plan. So as soon as we have all of our pieces connected, we can get started to putting them into the square shape that we want it to be. So you see here the pretty sides, and now we're going to connect the open edges basically. So what we're going to do is fold any 2 together like this. I'm going to start here, and when you pin everything, when it's all aligned, then you can do a straight stitch across that edge and connect those 2 ends that way. Then what you want to do is connect all of the rest of them, so it's going to be easy, maybe a bit tricky to plan, but just connect the 2 edges that are open and one next to each other. That's the easiest way to look at it. And then after a while it's going to look really weird, but when you turn it inside out later, you're definitely going to get your square shape. So follow me and I'll show you how to do it. Okay, so now that you have all of the edges put together, except for this very last one that you can see here, so we just need the 3 sides here, the 3 open edges that you can see. So one is connected, and then we have the top, right, and bottom that we're going to do. So what we're going to do is align those as well, pin them together to keep them in place, and we're going to do the first 2, and then the last one is going to stay just a little bit open. So I'm going to do it halfway here just to make sure that I can push everything through, because we're going to put it the right way around. Now, right now it's inside out basically, so we want a little hole, just like with all of our projects, that we can use to turn everything the right way around. So yeah, I'm gonna pin everything in place, and then I'll do a stitch up to here and then turn it inside out. Okay, so now you can see our box slowly getting its form. And what I'm gonna do now is just fix some of the corners so that I don't have as much leftover fabric there, and you can see the little hole that I have that we're gonna use to turn everything inside out. And now that I've turned everything inside out, also make sure that you don't rip anything. So you don't want to rip the stitch that you're pushing it through or through the little hole. And yeah, it might take some time, but it's definitely worth the patience. And you can see here the lovely corners. They turned out really well because we removed the excess fabric on the inside. If not, you can turn it inside out once again and just make sure to fix the corner that you're not satisfied with. So yeah, all we have to do now is basically stuff this with pretty much anything that you want. So you can do many different things here. I'm going to show you what I got for it. So this is the store-bought cushion filling material. I think it's for cushions. It can be used pretty much for anything, I think. But yeah, you can cut this out in the shape that you want. So in my case, I'm going to use the little pattern that we have, and then we're going to push it to the inside with the exact same hole that we used to turn everything inside out, and then we're going to close that hole up. So now that we've filled everything, we've stuffed it to our liking, we can close up this very little hole that we have left over. So you can fold the edges nicely inward so that you can hide them and just do a regular straight stitch across from there. So basically just make sure that it looks nice and neat, and then run it through your sewing machine. Or you can use a hand sewn stitch, and then have a little bit more control over it, so something like a mattress stitch or whatever else you prefer. And I'm going to show you the very finished final result, our little baby or toddler square. And you can see here all of the sides that we have. It's really interesting, it's super textured, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun for any baby or toddler. So I hope you enjoyed today's project. Feel free to let me know what you think, and see you in our next idea. Have a great day. Bye!